Good afternoon, everyone. It is Bridget here from Bridget's Healthy Kitchen, wishing you a wonderful day wherever you are in the world and whatever you are doing. I hope you are safe and I hope you are well. Thank you for joining me on this episode of Quarantine Cooking or Quarantine Kitchen. We are doing a recipe today. I actually released the recipe on Facebook, the PDF printable version on Facebook this morning, and it is for my healthier ANZAC biscuits. Now, for anyone who's joining us who's not based in Australia or New Zealand, you may be asking the question, what's an ANZAC biscuit? Because you may not know what the acronym ANZAC stands for. So during World War I, Australian and New Zealand soldiers, they traveled kind of together because we're kind of from the same part of the world, and when we were helping to fight the wars, they tended to put the Australian and New Zealand soldiers together, and they formed this band known as the ANZACs, which stands for Australia, New Zealand, so ANZAC, Australia, New Zealand Army Corps, and they formed this band of brothers, of this brotherhood of soldiers who were out there fighting world wars, and it started around about World War I, so between 1914 to 1918 during World War I, and the ANZACs literally are a heritage to the countries of New Zealand and Australia. And every year in April the 25th, we celebrate our ANZACs. We remember them. We remember the soldiers that fought for us. We remember the sacrifices that they made so that we could live in free countries. And one of the traditions, I suppose, when it comes to ANZAC Day on the 25th is, firstly, we have a dawn service where we play the last post and we remember our ANZACs, which may be a little bit different this year, obviously, because of the pandemic and the lockdowns. It may be look a bit different. But the other thing that we tend to do is we tend to bake. And we bake ANZAC biscuits, because ANZAC biscuits were originally or traditionally designed to be sent to our soldiers during wartime. So, you know, the homeland, the mums and the aunties and the sisters and the grandmas who were back in the homelands were creating these really sturdy biscuits that could survive long sea voyages. So our ANZACs, our boys on the front line, and they were boys, they were usually less than 20 years old. The boys on our front line could have something homemade from home. And so the ANZAC biscuit evolved out of this tradition that we wanted to send a little piece of home to our boys on the front line. And that biscuit had to have a few things involved in it. It had to be really sturdy, had to be able to survive a very long sea voyage. And it also had to be made with ingredients that you could gather during wartime. So, you know, there weren't ingredients that we're accustomed to now. We can just, you know, even during, let's be honest, even during this lockdown, even during this pandemic, we can still source ingredients for us. Ingredients that our grandmothers and our great-grandmothers and our great-aunties could not source because they were during wartime. So the ingredients in an ANZAC are really, really simple. And they're very readily available. So traditionally an ANZAC biscuit is made with flour and oats, so it's like an oatmeal cookie. And I've just seen Marilyn, Auntie Marilyn, my beautiful Auntie Marilyn, who lives in Victoria and in Australia, has just reminded me that it's actually ANZAC Day, which is the 25th of April, is my Uncle Rex's birthday. How old will he be, Auntie Marilyn? Do you remember? I don't want to put him on the spot, but I know he's older than you, so we can talk about that. We can totally talk about how old he is. So yes, it is my uncle's birthday as well. But our ANZAC biscuits, like I said, were created from this need for us to want to send something to nourish, and also to just, in Māori we call this awhi, which means to take in your arms and to look after. I don't know what the English equivalent to that word of awhi is. It means to support and nurture and provide for, even if you can't be with someone, but you can still awhi them through your love. And right now we're doing this, aren't we, virtually, because we can't be with the people we love all at the same time now because we're part of a lockdown. So we send our love in other ways, and this is me sending my love to you guys. ANZAC Biscuits, I shared the recipes I was saying this morning. Mahi, could you please throw up a link so anyone who hasn't already downloaded the PDF, you need this recipe in your life. Even if you're not from Australia or New Zealand, they're really, really good biscuits, aka cookies. Alright, if you're wondering if you're from the States and you're like, biscuit, thinking I'm making a scone, no, this is like our equivalent of a cookie. So traditionally they were made with ingredients that don't fit into definitely my diet now. I can't have gluten because I'm intolerant. I can't have dairy because I'm intolerant. I do not eat sugar because it makes me nuts and gives me mood swings and brain fog. So I've taken all those things out of this cookie recipe for us. So it's sugar-free, it is dairy-free, and it is gluten-free. Now a caveat on that gluten-free premise there. If you are celiac, so you have an extreme allergy or an extreme reaction to gluten. And if you're celiac, you know you're celiac because you can't even have trace elements. So if you are celiac, then what you need to do is you need to make sure you have gluten-free oats, which are available. But for those of us who are non-celiac, myself, I'm not a celiac, I'm just gluten intolerant, I can't deal with it. The trace elements that are in oats are so minute they don't even affect my gluten intolerance. So there's the caveat there, that yes, these are gluten-free, but if you are celiac, you need to ensure, and you already know this because you're celiac and you know this, and you know how inflammatory gluten is to your body, you know that you need to get gluten-free oats for this. That's the only caveat there. But gluten-free, sugar-free, dairy-free, let's get into the recipe with a deep breath because I talked a lot there. It's easy, by the way, which is like the best part about this, is they're so simple. And if you are an expat living in another country, apart from Australia and New Zealand, you know how vital these biscuits were as we were growing up. Back in New Zealand, back in Australia, they really are a reminder of home and a reminder of our dearly departed soldiers and those that survived and came back as well. So here we go, celebrating that we live in a free country thanks to those that fought for us and sacrificed for us. Here's my little piece for you guys so we can all celebrate together, because it's really cool that, you know, we can now eat all this food and not have to worry about having sugar and gluten and dairy. So here we go, recipe time. Get a bowl. It's easy. Like I said, it's easy. I've got my bowl always, as you guys know. I have it on my my scale so I can measure directly into my bowl. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take up my gluten-free oats, and I'm adding into my bowl 100 grams, which is about 3.5 ounces of oats. Now you can use whole oats. I'm actually using quick oats, which are just cut up a bit smaller, and I do find that they make a wetter biscuit, whereas the whole oats, they tend to be a little bit drier, so I do quite like this, these sort of more instant style, which just basically means they've been cut up finer. So I have whole oats in there, 100 grams. The next thing I'm going to add is a bit of coconut flour. If you don't like coconut flour or you can't get it, you could also use almond flour here. And we're going to be adding in 50 grams of coconut flour, which is about 1.7 ounces. So less than 2 ounces if you are joining us from America, where we still do imperial measurements. Whoops, 50 grams is going in there. I'm also going to be adding a little bit of gluten-free flour, which is just one I get from the, you know, store-bought gluten-free flour. And once again, just going straight into the bowl. And I'm adding in 70 grams of gluten-free flour, which is about 2.5 ounces. That goes in there. There we go, perfect. Instead of gluten-free flour, you could also just use rice flour right there and then. That's all you need to do is rice flour. It would still work perfectly well. So now that that is in there, I'm going to be adding the portion that's going to start to make this a bit sweeter. Because remember, guys, we have taken out the sugar. So what I'm using instead is my favorite. Anyone who knows me, they know exactly what's in this jar. This is my jar of inulin powder, and I'm going to be adding in 75 grams of inulin is going in there. And if you're wondering if that's a lot of inulin, it will make you rush off to the toilet. I have tested this recipe many times. You won't be rushing off to the toilet. But if you do find that that is not sweet enough, which I kind of find, I actually add another type of sweetener in there as well, which I'll get onto in a second. So give that a bit of a stir. There's all the dry ingredients in there, looking good. Don't have to over mix it, don't have to worry too much about it, it's just as simple as that. The next thing we're going to think about doing is we're going to be talking about or mixing together the wet ingredients. So you just need a bowl or a jug or whatever it is you might have. I'm just going to put this onto milliliters so I can measure liquid instead of grams. And the first thing that I want to think about when it comes to this is the coconut oil that I'm going to be putting into here right now. So this does have a little bit of coconut oil, and not too much. It's about 3.5 ounces, which is about 100 mils of coconut oil. And this is replacing obviously the butter, because I'm dairy free, so I use coconut oil instead, and it still gives it a lovely flavor. And one of the reasons why I love using coconut oil in this recipe is because one of the dry ingredients that I forgot that I'm going to add right now, because I forgot it. The last dry ingredient, can't even read my own recipes, which is hilarious. Oh, let's go mode. Come on, give me grams, give me grams. Well, it doesn't want to give me grams, don't know why. Grams, I'm looking for grams. There we go. Okay, yes, no, got it. Alright, the last ingredient I forgot to add that was dry was actually the coconut, and I'm using shredded coconut there as well. So I'm only adding in 50 grams of coconut, not much, 50 grams of coconut shredded, and shredded means it's just a bit longer than the desiccated ones. I reckon it produces a nicer, more moist biscuit than the desiccated coconut. Another little, I suppose, little trick that I've noticed along the way is that adding shredded coconut just kind of improves the biscuit just a little bit more. Okay, now I'm going to stop there. That is all the dry ingredients. That is all the dry ingredients. Let's go back to the wet. Alright, so we've got our coconut oil in there. Remember, that is to replace the butter that would normally go into these biscuits. So we've got our coconut oil. I'm also going to add the second type of sweetener that I'm using, which is a fiber syrup. So it's kind of like the syrup version of inulin powder. It's definitely sweeter than inulin powder, and normally traditionally ANZAC biscuits have golden syrup, so this is to replace the golden syrup. Now if you really are not that sugar free, you may decide you want to use golden syrup instead, but just remember golden syrup is a sugar and it will spike your insulin levels and it will raise your blood glucose level, where that fiber syrup does not. Now if you are, and I'm putting 3 tablespoons of that in here by the way, into the coconut oil. Now if you are celiac, this also is a no-no for you as well. Fiber syrup is just one of the things that celiacs will pick up, because they can really pick up even minute levels of gluten. This has very minute levels of gluten, so if you are a celiac, you want to get rid of that and maybe replace it with golden syrup. But also remember, golden syrup is a sugar, so it will raise those blood sugar levels. So we've got our fiber syrup in there, and the very last thing that I want to do, I'm just going to go over to my jug. Give me a second, please. Gotta find my jug. Hot water. So here's my kettle, and just into my pot, it's just recently boiled, I want to put 1 tablespoon of boiling or very, very hot water into my cup. And then the very last thing we're going to be adding into this is just a little bit of baking soda, and I need the hot water there to dissolve the baking soda. And we're just putting into that 1 teaspoon of baking soda goes into our 1 tablespoon of hot or boiling water, and that has now dissolved. So now that it's dissolved and you get a little bit of it starts to fizz a little bit, so you know that the water's nice and hot, just pour that straight into your coconut oil, into your fiber syrup, give it a bit of a mix. And then we can just combine all these ingredients together. So I've got the dry, make a well. The reason we make a well, it just helps to incorporate things quite evenly. So just in the middle, so we put the liquid straight into the middle. Oh, can you guys see that syrupy stuff? That's our fiber syrup going in there. Lovely jubbly. It's going to be very nice. Don't waste any. And then just give it a bit of a mix together. So the consistency is a vital part, and probably the only watch point that I really want to point out when it comes to this recipe is the consistency of the dough when you start mixing. Because I know that some people in the past have struggled with their dough because it's come out to be a little bit crumbly, and they've struggled to roll the ANZACs into balls, which is the next step that we're going to do. So you need to just keep an eye on that consistency, and what you're ideally looking for is you're looking for a mixture that is not too wet, but at the same time you don't want it to be crumbly, because you need the ability to be able, using clean hands of course, very clean hands, to be able to pick up some of the mixture and then be able to squish it into a ball. If you are doing this right now and you are squishing it and it's crumbling away, there's every chance that you need to add a bit more liquid into this. And it's quite easy to do. And the reason why you may need to add a bit more liquid is because your flours that you're using are different to mine. So they're a different brand, and some flours are more absorbent than others. Some need more liquid. So if you find that you're doing this and it's not holding together in this very smooth ball, all you need to do is very slowly begin to incorporate a little bit of water, 1 tablespoon at a time. So if your dough is crumbly and you're not getting that, take 1 tablespoon of water, put it into your mix, give it another stir, and then attempt to create that ball. And if you get that ball, you're fine. If it's still crumbling, another tablespoon of water, and only just do the water really gently, because you don't want to add too much liquid, because then your cookies will not turn out very well. So what you're looking for is the ability to do that. Look at that. So that is our ANZAC biscuit ball made. And from this mixture here, you're going to get between 12 to 14 or 15 cookies, depending on the size that you do them. I tend to do them in not quite a golf ball because it's quite large. I would say like a small golf ball, about that big. Let's weigh it. That's a really good idea actually, so you guys get a bit of an idea of how much it weighs. Okay, come on grams. I think I need new batteries in my there we go. All right, it's weighing between 35 to 40 grams is what you're looking for, and from that weight, if you want to be really precise and put on your scales, you're going to get about 14 to 15 biscuits out of this, which is great from all these ingredients. So the next step is, once you've got it at the consistency where you're able to roll your balls without them breaking and crumbling away, as you can see that was easy, right? I'm weighing it off, that was a bit big, that was 45, take a little bit off. There we go, it's coming in at 40. Once you've done that, you roll your mixture out until you have 12 to 15 balls of ANZAC cookies. Sorry, biscuits. They're not cookies, they're biscuits. Weighing it off, 37, perfect. All right, so once you've weighed out that, the next step is to take up your baking sheet. Actually, prior to doing this, there is one step before this, which is preheating your oven. So the oven sits at 170 degrees Celsius, 170 degrees Celsius, which is around about 340, I believe. Yep, nailed it. 340 degrees Fahrenheit. Your oven is set on bake. Have your rack, your metal rack, in the middle of the oven, so we get cooking all around. And then taking a baking sheet or a cookie tray, cover it with non-stick baking paper, which is what I've done here. And then all you need to do is put your cookies onto your baking sheet. A little bit of room because we're going to be squashing them. So put them onto your baking sheet. Imagine this is full, right? This has got 12 to 14 cookies on it. It's completely full. And once you're at this point, and before they go into the oven, to give you a better cook and even cook, I just use a spatula and then just go along and then just press the cookies down just to flatten them. So I get an even flattened cookie just using a flat spatula. So at this point now, these cookies will now go into the oven for 7 minutes. Yeah? 7 minutes in a hot preheated oven. Set at 170 degrees or 340 degrees Fahrenheit. After 7 minutes, you want to regather your spatula, and you're going to go along and you're going to flatten them even further, because they will be more pliable once you've had them in the oven for the first 7 minutes. So once you flatten them a second time, put them back into the oven and cook them for a further 3 to 5 minutes. And what you will get for your efforts. Very exciting. Are you ready? Are you ready? What you will get is a tray load of the most gorgeous ANZAC biscuits. Healthy, healthy, check this out. Healthy, oh my gosh, ANZAC biscuits. So ideally when they come out of the oven, leave them on the tray for about 20 minutes before you transfer them to a wire rack to cool completely. But you have the most amazing ANZAC, I know, right? There is so little effort for such a wonderful result. Like seriously, you're like, I'm sorry, that was really easy. These are easy to make. Oh, they smell like April. They smell like April. I have to say, this for me, every year, I can't even remember when I started to create this own tradition within my family that every single year, come April the 25th, a couple days prior, I start baking ANZAC cookies for the kids. They have been in the kitchen with me, helping to mold them and shape them and press them so that they can also begin to understand this wonderful tradition that we have to remember our soldiers. And you then have this amazing, amazing result after a few ingredients, bit of time. Oh, here we go. Yes. One more for Mum. Hey, Mahay's sitting with his mum. He took one for himself and he did not pass. There, you not. Please let me know what you think. They're pretty fabulous. So there's not much involved in creating something really fabulous for you. Look at the color that you get on that. And like, I'm terrible. I actually like to store these in the fridge. Not terrible. This is just my own personal preference. Is I store them in the fridge because then they get really, really chewy and they're delicious from the fridge. But you know, if you leave them out, they'll probably last 20 minutes if you leave them on the bench. But if you want to store them because maybe there's just only a couple of you in the house, or you make loads and loads and loads, these will last in an airtight container for about 4 to 5 days. They will last even longer in the fridge, and then you have a chewy bite of an ANZAC with a lovely cup of tea. It is so traditional, it's so wonderful. So there you go. I thank you for joining me today. I hope you've enjoyed that few little tricks and tips for you when it comes to these gorgeous cookies, but they're easy to do, guys. Just go and do them. Show me photos. I want to see what you guys have come up with as well. So thank you for joining me today. I am doing something very exciting for you guys tomorrow. I have worked on a recipe for us that is a gluten-free, dairy-free crepe recipe. You know that gorgeous foldable crepes? Tomorrow, here in Bridget's Healthy Kitchen, we're making crepes. Please join me. I would love to see you. Until then, take care of everyone, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Thank you.